Westwood One presents America at Night. Here's your host, McGraw Milhaven.
Hey, good evening, everybody. We're in for a treat tonight. A little bit later on, we're going to talk to former Secretary of Agriculture Dan Glickman on a night in which it was announced that farmers will be getting some type of subsidy as the tariffs are hitting the farmland hard. So we'll get a chance to talk about that a little bit later on. Phone calls in the third hour. But tonight, maybe you saw earlier in the year, NBC ran a special on the 100-year anniversary of the Grand Ole Opry. Well, the official 100-day or 100-year anniversary was on November 28th. Back in 1925, a guy named Uncle Jimmy Thompson, a crusty 77-year-old, played a program on the fiddle, and it appeared on a Nashville radio station just newly minted called WSM, and that was the beginning of the Grand Ole Opry. So tonight we're going to talk and do a little history lesson on the Grand Ole Opry. And with us, we have the host of the Grand Ole Opry and co-host and producer of Coffee, Country, and Cody on WSM Radio in Nashville, Charlie Mattos. Welcome to America at Night.
Oh, it's great to be with you. And by the way, congratulations on the new gig. I know the folks in St. Louis have loved you for years, and I'm glad the rest of the country is getting to experience it now.
Charlie, you're my new favorite best friend, so keep on talking all night long. Two radio guys talking on the microphones. Can't be all bad tonight. Charlie, I'm jealous. I didn't grow up with country music, and I found it, I don't know, I guess Garth Brooks introduced me to it, and then I've been a lover of country music ever since. I've never been down to Nashville, but I love country music, and I saw that special, and I just fell in love with the Grand Ole Opry. So how did you, growing up in the East Coast, end up working at one of the greatest gigs in radio?
Yeah, it's odd. You don't think of, Providence, Rhode Island as the hotbed of country music, but my parents were the biggest country fans. I lived in Miami 9 years, I'm a Miami Hurricane alum, and I worked in radio 5 years after that. And, eventually happens to everyone in radio. My news talk station in Miami changed format. 29 people got let go all at once. And 2 weeks later, I found myself in Nashville, Tennessee. It never was my bucket list city to go to, but I fell in love with the city. And I've been there more than half my life now.
So WSM Radio, it's is it the Grand Ole Opry, or is the Grand Ole Opry the radio station, or is the radio station the Grand Ole Opry? Explain that to us.
The radio station began October 5th, 1925. That's when they officially signed on the air at 6:50 a.m. And about 7 weeks later is when Uncle Jimmy Thompson, who you referenced, stopped by on a Saturday night to play some old-time fiddle tunes. And that kind of morphed the show that we still do now a century later. The radio station preceded the show by about 6 or 7 weeks.
So some program director who had nothing to do on a Saturday night said, hey, get this guy in and let's play a little music and see what happens. And that was, really, you could argue that that's why Nashville is the center of the universe for country music, right?
Yeah, and it was the magic of radio back in the day. You can picture 1925. Obviously nobody knew what anybody looked like. It was all theater of the mind, right? So George D. Hay, the solemn old judge, as he was called, wanted something different on a Saturday and thought, why don't we do some live music? And they invited Jimmy Thompson, who you described very accurately as old and crusty. I don't think I've ever seen a photo of the man smiling, but he came by and played some songs, and it was incredibly popular. And people started, so it became a Saturday night thing, and people started coming to the radio station to catch a glimpse of what was happening. And they suddenly realized that, we can't have hundreds of people packing the hallways of our radio station. And then they quickly found a venue for it. But the solemn old judge was neither solemn or old. He was 30 years old and had moved from Chicago to take over the programming at this brand new radio station, WSM. And, when the station signed on the air, it signed on the air at 8 o'clock at night. on October 5th, 1925. And the Shriners Band came and paraded through the center of Nashville to celebrate the grand opening. They had speakers all around downtown so people could hear. Thousands of people came out just to stand outside the building when the station signed on the air. So it was just a crazy time a century ago.
So it was more or less of a radio station promotion that one of the rare times they actually worked, I guess.
Unlike turkey slang, absolutely. Yeah, I'd say a century later it turned out to be a pretty good idea. Yeah,
and so I mean the country music evolves, right? It was the old school country music, and then you get to the 40s and the 50s, and you get to when did it become the place you had to play to make it? I mean, how did that journey get to there?
Yeah, the famous catchphrase of the Opry is the show that made country music famous. And those first few years, the decade of the 20s, was pretty much all instrumentals. You really didn't get vocals till the 30s. Guys like Eddie Arnold would have been big, Roy Acuff, late in that decade, and then of course when you get to the late 40s and 50s, you're talking Hank Williams. Certainly, I think it hit its stride when probably the Ryman Auditorium became the home of the Opry. We were there about 30 years, like 1943 to 1974. And those early to mid 40s is probably when it really hit. I mean, yeah, if you put Grand Ole Opry star before your name as an artist, it was a huge calling card. I mean, you could go anywhere in the country and play, and Grand Ole Opry star Eddie Arnold and Minnie Pearl and other stars of your Grand Ole Opry. They did package shows all over the country with Opry stars. It was a big deal.
Now, Charlie Mattos joining us, host of the Grand Ole Opry on Coffee Country and Cody on WSM Radio in Nashville, talking about the 100-year anniversary of the Grand Ole Opry. Do they have? I'm going to get this. I'm going to butcher this. Do they have a club or a Hall of Fame or a backstage? I mean, there's some club that you get sort of inducted into, correct?
Well, there are only 230 something artists in the history of the show that have been asked to be members of the Grand Ole Opry. I mean, many artists play the show as guests, and we have a lot of artists who debut for the first time. I guess you can only debut for the first time. That was a little redundant, but you know what I'm saying. There are a lot of come that will play once. I mean, this year has been crazy. I think in the last calendar year we've had everybody from Post Malone to Train to James Taylor come and play the Opry during our big 100th year. But yeah, so getting asked to be a member of the Opry is a big deal. There are a little over 60 living members of the Opry right now. But if you think of how many thousands of people have sung country music through the last century, that only a little over 200 have actually been members of the show, is pretty cool. Bill Anderson, Whisper Bill Anderson, is the guy who's been the longest serving member. He's been an Opry star for 64 and a half years. And Kathy Mattea is our newest member. She was inducted back in October.
Music tastes and music genres are all sort of merging into one. Do you only allow country music on? Because I don't know if Post Malone would be considered country, or what is country, or how do you determine that?
Yeah, it's a nice mix, and it always was. I mean, you always heard bluegrass. I mean, bluegrass was born at the Ryman Auditorium with Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys, and he was a pivotal star of the Opry for decades. So you always had that. A fair amount of Americana has always been a part of the show, at least the last couple of decades since that genre has been coined Americana. The style always existed, and country's always been a little different too. You had that Bakersfield sound with Buck Owens, and much more recently guys like Dwight Yoakam and that sound. But so yeah, you get a little bit of everything on a given night. Comedy has always been a part of the show as well, from Minnie Pearl and Roy Acuff doing bits, and Jerry Clower, and now Henry Cho and Gary Muldeer, two legendary comedians, are members of our Opry family. So it's country certainly is the core and the root, but you'll see a little bit of everything on any given night.
Charlie, hold that thought. Charlie Mattos is the host of the Grand Ole Opry, co-host and producer of Coffee, Country, and Cody on WSM Radio. The Grand Ole Opry turning 100 just last month, and we're taking a stroll down memory lane. McGraw Milhaven, America at Night. Back in a moment.
Live from coast to coast, this is America at Night with McGraw Milhaven. You're listening to America at Night with McGraw Milhaven.
The Grand Ole Opry turns 100 this year, and we're talking about it with Charlie Mattos, who is a host at WSM Radio in Nashville. Charlie, I was surprised to learn that Elvis only played once at the Grand Ole Opry and wasn't very well received, they say.
Yep, that is true. Ryman Auditorium, very early in his career. I think he was still a Sun Records artist. I'm not even sure he had signed to RCA at the time. One of his early singles was a cover of Bill Monroe's Blue Moon of Kentucky, but it was done in a much more upbeat rockabilly style. I don't think it was a horrible reception, but I would probably say lukewarm at best from the crowd. And yeah, it's the only time he ever played. I mean, he played Nashville, several times in the 70s as a touring artist, but the Grand Ole Opry as a show, only one time.
Yeah. How hard is it to get tickets?
Depends who's on the show. We do a lot of shows. We're over. Saturday night is the traditional historic Grand Ole Opry. That's the night it all started on, and we're over 5,200 Saturday night performances. We did, I think October, about 4 years ago, we hit our 5,000th Saturday night, which was a pretty cool milestone. But there's always a Friday night show now, almost all year round. There's a Tuesday night. We've got a Wednesday night. I'm working tomorrow night with Lainey Wilson, who's the reigning Entertainer of the Year at both the CMA and ACMs. We do a Thursday series in the spring and summer with Larry Gatlin as the host, called Opry Country Classics. So I joke we're kind of like a barbershop. We're open every day but Monday. So yeah, if you plan ahead and especially if there's an artist you want to see, you can usually get tickets.
Is it? Well, I got to ask you about Garth Brooks. I mean, some of the biggies. Garth would seem to just want to play that venue because he's such a great historian and such a great fan of old style country music. Yeah,
and there are certain artists, and he's definitely at the top of the list, that the energy level in the building when he's there is pretty amazing, and you just never know what you're going to get, which I love. And I mean, he always delivers, but oftentimes there's a surprise. I mean, I worked a 2-show Saturday night with him where we had a 7:00 and then we had a 9:30-ish show, and the first show kind of has to end at a certain time, but the second show, there's really no stop sign on it, and he decided he wanted to come do a couple extra songs. So the folks at the late show, we were there past midnight. He was there a little extra. There was one night where the curtain actually had come down and the show was over, and he just said, can we just do a few more? I'm feeling it. And, they put in an urgent call to the radio station, pot us back up. The curtain went back up, and, thankfully about 95% of the crowd was still there, and he played another half hour. So, those kind of nights, they're not frequent, but when they happen, they're extra special. And he's he's one who gets it for sure.
Well, that's why you go to a concert and they have the faux encore, right? You go to a concert and the guy hasn't played his signature song.
Right.
They're going to play it, all right? So they're just sort of teasing. But that's what I love about country music, I guess. In some sense, there's a little bit more, I don't know, fan-friendly, or that they're not, it isn't all scripted. It's a little bit off script. It's a little bit sort of, let's just sort of see what happens type of deal.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the one thing about the Opry I can say is, over the course of 100 years, every show is live. And while there's a format and kind of a script, something interesting happens just about every night. And that's honestly what makes it fun. I mean, you could come to the show 100 times and you would see 100 different shows. You might see a few of the same artists, but no two have ever been alike. And that's what I love about being at that podium. It's just, you never know what you're going to get.
Charlie, I want to hold you off through the break because I want to ask you about Johnny Cash. But you said you were there that night with Garth. What were you doing? What were you doing? I can only imagine.
Just kind of.
I mean, were you holding his coat? Were you in the stage? Were you dancing with him on stage? What were you doing with him?
Oh, no. Well, I got to, as the host, I kind of bring on and take off all the artists, and then just kind of go along for the ride. Yeah. I'm certainly not out there playing with them, believe me.
That's a pretty good gig you got there, Charlie, being the host of the Grand Ole Opry. That's a pretty good deal for you. Hold that thought, Charlie. I want to ask you about Johnny Cash when we come back. Charlie Mattos is with us. He's with WSM Radio in Nashville. The Grand Ole Opry turned 100 a couple of weeks ago, and we're talking and taking a trip down memory lane. Charlie Mattos, the host of Coffee, Country, and Cody on WSM Radio. You're listening to America at Night with McGraw Milhaven. Stay right there. Back in a moment.
This is America at Night with McGraw Milhaven.
Well, after listening to Charlie Mattos, the summer trip to Nashville is already in the books. We got to bring the little one down to the Grand Ole Opry and give her a little culture. Coffee, Country, and Cody. Charlie Mattos hosts that show on WSM Radio in Nashville. We're talking about the Grand Ole Opry and the 100th anniversary of the Grand Ole Opry. Charlie, is it true they were going to tear down the Wyman Auditorium? Was that even possible?
Oh, yeah, it was very possible. Yeah, we left there the Opry left in March of 1974. And, people weren't using it it wasn't a touring stop for artists. So it was open for tours. You could go tour it, but it pretty much sat in a state of disrepair for a couple of decades, to the point where, there were broken windows up top and pigeons living in the balcony. And it was a concert by Emmylou Harris that really raised awareness for A, the state of the Ryman, and B, the need to preserve it. She did a show there. And then it ended up doing a live album. I think there was a PBS special as well. It was filmed, but they would only allow about 250 people in it. They certainly wouldn't allow anybody to go up in the balcony because it just wasn't safe. They were worried that people would fall through. It was that bad. And famously, back in the day, the Ryman didn't have any air conditioning, so you really were incredibly hot in July and August and really cold in the winter. So when they moved to the new Opry House, which is still our current home, in 1974, most of the artists were very, very happy to say adios to the Ryman Auditorium. Since then, and since that Emmylou show, it has gotten several amazing renovations. It's kept so much of its historical feel, but yet made it a really modern facility. And it's my favorite place on the planet to see a show.
So they now have like two venues, more or less, the newer one, but they still kept the old one.
Yeah, well, the owned by the same company, but the Ryman probably does 300 concerts a year. I've seen, and we go back in January and do a few Opry shows at the Ryman Auditorium every year, just to kind of go back and pay homage to our most famous former home. But I've seen everybody. I've seen everybody from Tom Petty to Bruce Springsteen to Sheryl Crow a bunch of times at you name it, everybody has played the Ryman.
When are you going to write a book?
Well, I'm not sure who would want to read it, but
I don't know about that. It sounds like you had a lot of brushes with a lot of great nights and great country music and everything out. I want to ask you about Johnny Cash because I don't think any actor or any artist is connected more with the Grand Ole Opry than Johnny Cash. And he had his good nights and he has not so good nights there.
Yeah, well, would have debuted back in the mid-'50s when he was huge on Sun Records. Famously met his would-be wife, June Carter, backstage at the Ryman Auditorium. Had a really bad night where the front of the stage used to have these lights that were kind of bulb lights. And Johnny one night, probably not in the best state of mind, kicked a lot of them out. And he and the Opry parted ways for a few years, but then he was welcomed back. And famously, the Johnny Cash TV show that he did, I think, for 3 seasons, was shot at the Ryman Auditorium. And, it's where he and Bob Dylan famously got to be great friends. Dylan was one of his first guests on the show. The only son of Johnny Cash and June Carter, John Carter Cash, he and his wife Anna Christina Cash played the Opry frequently. So that legacy still continues. Roseanne has been there, Carlene Carter as well. So the Cash legacy continues.
Tell me about Loretta Lynn and a story or two from the Grand Ole Opry and the old coal miner's daughter.
Yeah, when we moved from the Ryman, we took one piece of it with us, and we made it the center circle of the new Opry House, and it's simply referred to as the Circle, and it's wood from the early 1950s Ryman. And Loretta would say famously that just stepping in that circle just made her so nervous. She would spend as little time in it as possible. She'd walk through it a few times, but not one of those who wanted to camp out in there. I got to see her one of her final Opry performances, and it was at the Ryman Auditorium. And when she sweeps on the stage, you just know you're seeing a legend. Even in advancing age and health, the entertainer still was there. It was pretty amazing.
If anyone deserved to be in that circle, it was Loretta Lynn, and yet she had such reverence for the history of it, she didn't feel comfortable in there.
Yeah, exactly. Even artists, it's so funny because we have artists who debut now who have sold billions of streams and platinum records, and they say that they don't get nervous, and there's something about that show and that circle and just all the aura and the history surrounding it. The fact that, the legendary Hank Williams has probably stepped on that same piece of wood that you're about to step on is it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, hallowed ground, no question about it. With all deference to Garth Brooks, I love me some George Strait, and he's only appeared once at the Grand Ole Opry.
Yep, and I certainly have never seen him there. He's done shows in Nashville and sold out our football stadium, but yeah, there's a few. Merle Haggard, I don't think played a whole lot. There are a couple that just kind of never kind of cross paths, but pretty much everybody on your country bucket list has played the Opry. I got a crazy debut for you, especially since St. Louis is such a part of your history. I worked the Opry debut of Adam Wainwright.
Oh, now tell me about this one.
He's really a terrific singer and songwriter. I kid you not. I've worked with two Cy Young Award winners. Barry Zito was another who's a great songwriter and a guitar player. But Adam could not have been nicer. So it's not often you can throw in World Series champion, Cy Young Award winner, and making his Grand Ole Opry debut. So.
Charlie, I have to correct you. I don't think Adam Wainwright won a Cy Young. He came close a couple times.
But he's World Series, though, right? He's got a World Series.
Absolutely. Yes, he is. Yeah. Yes, he is. Okay. World Series and one heck of a nice man. And, yeah, he has sort of picked up the guitar, and he's a little country now. And so, wow, that's a great story. Charlie, the country music, let's talk about that for a second, because there's old country, there's new country. You could argue that new country is sort of the new top 40. Take me through that in country music. How are they squaring that? And is it a bit of an angst? Is it a bit of a pull and a push? How is country music dealing with that?
Well, again, the beauty of the Opry is you'll see it all on any given night. You could see Connie Smith, who's been a member of the Opry for 60 years and a Hall of Famer, or Bill Anderson, 64 years. And then you could see Lainey Wilson or Kelsey Ballerini or Carrie Underwood. So, we embrace it all. And I think that's the beauty of the show, really, that, it's kind of open to everybody under that umbrella. And, there aren't too many. You could argue that the Ryman Auditorium is kind of the birthplace of bluegrass, and you could make an argument that, Preservation Hall in New Orleans is one of the ground zero for jazz in the U.S. But those are venues and cities. There aren't many shows. Ed Sullivan is the only thing that comes to mind in rock and roll with, the legendary appearances from Elvis and the Beatles, those, bucket list, where were you moments, if you're old enough to remember those kind of things. But the Opry is the one constant over 100 years that's been the backbone of country music. And the fact that, a century later, we're still here and still fresh and not a relic, still relevant, is pretty cool.
So if you want to get into country music, right, you want to be in movies, you had to move to Hollywood. If you want to be in country music, you go down to Nashville and you play in the bars, you listen to people, you buy a song and you record it, and that's how you do it even today?
Yeah, the one thing about Nashville, I mean, if you're talented, you're talented, and if you're a great songwriter, you could write a good song in Buffalo as easily as you could in Nashville. But I think the one thing that moving to the city does is there's such talent in that city that it makes you raise your game. It makes you go to your A game, and it makes you better being surrounded by people who are really good. On any given night, your server at a restaurant could be more talented than somebody who's got a top 10 hit. They just don't have the luck, But yeah, being there, there's a lot of legendary honky tonks down on Lower Broadway in downtown Nashville where, people famously kind of cut their teeth and do, long 4-hour sets 5 days a week. Television has changed a lot of it too. So, Carrie Underwood won American Idol and, has proven to be a huge country star and a big part of our Opry family. So there's a lot of different ways to do it now.
What's the name of the bar in Nashville where an unknown named Garth Brooks walked in, sat down, and the guy in the front played the dance? and he bought it for $5 and turned it into the greatest songs ever recorded?
Well, I'm guessing it would probably be either Tootsie's or Roberts. Those are the two legendary honky tonks. Tony Arata is the songwriter who wrote the dance, is who you're referring to on that too. Yeah, well, Garth has a lot of signature songs, but that's certainly one of them.
Yeah. Charlie Mattos is our guest. He's the host of the Grand Ole Opry and Coffee, Country, and Cody on WSM Radio in Nashville. Charlie, you got a pretty good gig down there.
Yeah, I don't take it for granted. The only tough part is, and you know about these turnarounds. An Opry show finishes about 9:30 or 9:40, and you get home about 10:20, and it's about 11:30 before you can go to bed. And that morning show alarm rings at 2:45 or 3 a.m. And those turnarounds were a lot easier to do a few decades ago.
But the stories you can tell, and it's the connection to the audience, right? I mean, we'll start and end with radio, right? Even in 1925, radio was a connection. They've tried to kill radio 1,000 different ways. They just can't do it.
And the beauty of the Opry is it is at its heart a radio show, and we don't hide it. So when you come, I'm at the podium introducing guests, but I'm also reading live commercials. And while I'm reading the commercials, you see the set changes. The curtain doesn't come down. It's all there. And I think when people come for the very first time, they kind of know it's a radio show, but sometimes you forget it until you really hear it and see it, and then you see the whole thing. It's just a one of a kind experience.
That's an interesting point, because today, you go on YouTube, you're filming a radio show, it's a podcast. The Grand Ole Opry invented that 100 years ago.
Yeah, it's a very valid point indeed. Yep.
Charlie, thank you very much for taking time. I know you're busy, and I know it's late night, but it's been a wonderful, wonderful conversation, and thank you for all the kind words at the top. We're just trying to figure out our way and figuring out the clock and how to do this show, but thank you very much. It's been a treat talking to you, and next time I see you, I'll buy you a soda.
Well, please come to Nashville and come to the Opry and find an artist you want to see at the Ryman too, and make a long weekend of it. We'll treat you well in Music City. Thank you, sir. Have a good night. All right, you too, bud. You got it. Charlie Mattos, our guest, host of the Grand Ole Opry and Coffee, Country, and Cody on WSM Radio in Nashville. It turned 100 years. And I'm sorry to say, and very, very embarrassed to say, that I've never been to the Grand Ole Opry, but that is definitely a bucket list for me. And sitting in St. Louis, it's just down the river. What are you doing? Make a weekend of it. Get down to Nashville and see the Grand Ole Opry. All right. This is America at Night. I'm McGraw Milhaven. Back in a moment. From the heart of America, this is America at Night with McGraw Milhaven. Relax. You're listening to America at Night with McGraw Milhaven. Talking a little Grand Ole Opry tonight. If you've been there, I'm jealous. That's going to be on the bucket list for this summer. I got a 5-year-old, and we're sort of making a list of all the places we want to go and see and sort of take her. And yes, the cross-country trip in the RV, that is on the list. Maybe a little Nashville, maybe a little Mount Rushmore, maybe Yellowstone Park, right? Why don't you take a little vacation in your own country? McGraw Milhaven, America at Night here. We were talking about Garth Brooks last segment, and Garth is the goods. And it's interesting, Garth Brooks' career, right? Even with all this streaming going on, I don't believe that he's ever given the rights of his songs to a Spotify or an Apple. So you don't, even the jukebox at the bar, I think you have a hard time, maybe it is on the jukebox at the bar, but I think you have a hard time just sort of accidentally running into Garth Brooks songs. And I bought Garth's, I think I bought the cassettes, then I bought the CDs, and recently I just had an old 1970
60s cabinet record player restored. It's up in the family room. And we play records. We buy records, and we play the records. And it is so much fun. You forget how much fun records are. Matter of fact, my older niece came over, and we were having a party, and I'm in the kitchen. I said, hey, restack the records. And so she's like 30. So she goes into the room. She takes one look at the record player, and she yells to me, Uncle McGraw, yes. Do the records go from the inside out or the outside in? She had no idea what a record player was. And she looked at this thing. She couldn't tell if you put the needle at the end and let it go to the middle, or you put it in the middle and it goes out to the end. So I had to explain and show her. But to listen to Garth Brooks albums, right? We don't listen to albums anymore, right? We listen to one-off songs, which is fine. But when you put an album on and you just sort of get lost in the album, or it's not on shuffle, it's just sort of, right, plays the way the artist intends you to hear it, there's nothing better. But you don't hear Garth when I'm listening to a Spotify or an Apple Music or whatever else, and you just sort of make your playlist. You don't have Garth, which is interesting. But I mean, he's still the king, right? Don't get me wrong. But it's just interesting how he's the one who's been able to survive outside of the system that's set up. Very different system than the system in which we grew up in, right? With not so much 45s, but even those albums. All right. That's going to do it for hour number one, the Grand Ole Opry. Put it on your list of things to do. Hey, yesterday it was announced that President Trump is going to be giving $12 billion to the farmers. And just serendipitously, we've got Dan Glickman on the show tonight. He, of course, former Secretary of the Agriculture. We'll be able to talk with him about that, about the state of the farmers, how much these farm subsidies are going to help, how much the tariffs are hurting, and what about the future of farming. And he's got a new book out, so we'll talk with Dan Glickman, former Secretary of the Agriculture. And that's next hour. And then hour number 3, we'll take phone calls from everybody and anybody, so stay right there. The music says we're done for the hour. Our executive director is Alex Hinton. Our engineer tonight is Richard Good. I'm McGraw Milhaven, and this is America at Night on Westwood One.
Westwood One presents America at Night. Here's your host, McGraw Milhaven.
Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. If I were to ask you the 2 biggest stories of the day today, 2 of the biggest stories is, well, the Netflix and Paramount trying to buy Warner Brothers, and the farm subsidies that the Trump administration has now offered to farmers. And if you wanted to talk to one guest who knows a little bit or a lot about both, he was head of the Major Motion Pictures Association, as well as former Secretary of Agriculture. I would tell you we're the luckiest radio show in America tonight because we have former Secretary of Agriculture and former head of the Major Motion Picture Association, Dan Glickman, joining us. Secretary, welcome to America at Night. Thank you for joining us.
I'm delighted to be with you.
The book you wrote a couple years ago is Laughing at Myself, My Education in Congress, on the Farm, and at the Movies. And part of the introduction, you say, what is a Jewish kid growing up in Kansas ending up with the life you live? Man, talk about a testament to the American dream.
Yeah, I think my grandfather was pretty smart when he emigrated to America, and he was always more patriotic than almost anybody else I ever know. I mean, he died 40, 50 years ago, but he got burned up when people would burn the American flag. I mean, he was actually kind of a liberal on most issues, but boy, was he proud of America and what his family accomplished.
You were a longtime congressman. After you left Congress, you were appointed by Bill Clinton to be Secretary of Agriculture, and that's where we'll start today. You have such great insight into what's going on. The plight of the farmer has taken a pretty serious turn these last couple of years. How bad is it on the farm these days?
Well, if you're small and you don't have a lot of capital, it's bad. And if you're scaled up and you're a farmer of size, and it's better. And not everybody is doing perfectly well, but if you're a large operator, diversified, so you don't just grow one crop, but you grow several crops and maybe livestock, you're actually doing okay. But if you're small and don't have those resources, you've been really hit by the weather, you've been hit by tariffs, and you've hit by unpredictability in the marketplace. So things are not good for those folks.
It was well known that China wasn't buying any of the soybeans, and President Trump cut a deal, and as China announced that they would start buying the soybeans. But I don't know if they're necessarily buying as many soybeans as they said they were. If you're a soybean farmer, how much trouble are you in these days?
Well, you certainly lost our biggest market, and the Chinese then went after the tariffs were announced by President Trump. The Chinese went to Brazil and Argentina to basically buy their soybeans, and it certainly, there was a lot of soybeans crop in storage, and it certainly was not good. So the Chinese have agreed to buy some soybeans. We don't know if they're going to honor their commitments yet, but they have started to buy some soybeans. But I think the big point here is the unpredictability of it. So, 7-8 years ago, we basically cut the Chinese off. Then we had to provide subsidies to American farmers to make them whole. And then the same thing kind of happened this time. So if you may notice, the administration has provided anywhere between 11 and $12 billion worth of farm aid, just announced it yesterday. And they're exploiting this like it's the greatest thing in the world, and it's certainly good if you need it. But they created the problem, and now they're solving the problem by providing a subsidy for the problem they created. So it left a lot of farmers in a lurch.
Yeah, is $12 billion, does that make a farmer whole? How does that money get to the farmer? And I guess the other question is, will it go to the small farmer, or will the bigger farms gobble all up that money?
Well, let's first recognize that you have a lot of farm program payments that are going out now unrelated to this. So farmers are getting federal assistance, and they're also getting subsidized crop insurance. So, but even with that, there are a lot of farmers, particularly small and medium-sized farmers, that are still hurting because of the soybean disaster and because of weather, climate, and related issues. It's not targeted towards small and medium-sized farmers, but there are income limits, and you can only get a certain amount of aid. So in that way, it's kind of targeted, but not really targeted very well. So it goes to everybody, but it's probably better than it was in the historic past, where virtually all of it went to larger farmers.
Yeah, farmers are very proud people. They must not like this at all.
It's an interesting thing. We have passed a lot of farm bills all the way from when I was back in Congress and a secretary to the current time. And, by and large, Congress is very generous to agriculture. And should be, because of the importance of agriculture and having food security both at home and globally around the world. But we pay out billions of dollars in crop subsidies, and farmers would much rather get their money in the marketplace and not have to rely on these government payments that kind of lurch from year to year with no real predictability to them.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard for a non-farmer to understand. You're standing in a field in the spring, and you've got gas, you've got tractors, you've got seed, you've got to pull it out of the ground. You don't know if you're going to make enough money per bushel to make it worth your while at the end of the season to actually plant it, right? I mean, because somebody's selling a widget or a phone or a TV, they know how much they're going to sell that TV for. The farmer doesn't know what that bushel of corn or soybeans is going to be 6 months from now.
And that's why these tariffs are so difficult for farmers, because they're unpredictable and the farmers have a market. I mean, the only way farmers make money is that if the weather's decent and the marketplace is pretty healthy and they have a market they can sell into. So with these tariffs, the Chinese dropped us, and, it created, chaos there. And you're right, you don't know from year to year, but it is important to recognize that the government has been good to farmers by and large. And both in terms of straight crop subsidies, conservation payments, and especially with crop insurance, where the government subsidizes a big chunk of the cost of growing a crop. And so I understand the difficulty that's out there, but it's not as if it's going on deaf ears either.
Dan Glickman is our guest this hour. He was former Secretary of Agriculture under President Clinton from 1995 to 2001. There's a new book out that he wrote called Laughing at Myself. We're just getting started. We got to talk about beef prices, and we got to talk about Netflix and Paramount and Warner Brothers, because he was head of the Major Motion Picture Association at one point. So this man knows a lot about a lot of what's going on. We're going to check in with him more in a moment. Stay right there. I'm McGraw Milhaven, America at Night.
From the heart of America, this is America at Night with McGraw Milhaven. This is America at Night with McGraw Milhaven.
Dan Glickman was a 9-term congressman from Kansas. He also went on to become Secretary of Agriculture under the Clinton administration. He's out with a book, Laughing at Myself. Dan Glickman, Secretary Glickman, let's talk about the toxic nature of politics today. You lived through the Clinton era, where I didn't think it could get any more toxic, but that was sort of child's play compared to what's going on now. What happened? How did it get worse than when you were in Washington?
Well, actually, I was started in the Carter era. I was elected to Congress in '76. So the Carter, and then, of course, Ronald Reagan for 8 years, and George H.W. Bush, and then Clinton. And then, we had Bush and Obama and now Trump. I know I'm forgetting somebody. But it was better in those early days. Now, there were several things that made it better. You didn't have the 24-hour media as much back in the 70s and 80s. Cable channels were just getting started, so there was not a lot of hot air in the media. The cost of campaigns was significantly less then than it is now. So members of Congress weren't out raising money all the time, which they do now. It's perpetual. And then when you have all that money to spend on ads, most of the ads are nasty, negative, hostile, mean. And so that all it's just a different world than it was before. And it's unfortunate, because the worst part about it is nothing really is getting done for the public. Congress and our government used to work relatively collaboratively to get things done, pass appropriations bills, and deal with very difficult issues. And that's what's not happening now. So we have shutdowns. We have the House out of representatives out of session for 2 months, not working. So the public is justifiably frustrated at this change.
Are there two separate worlds? In other words, when the camera's on, right, you're complaining, you're throwing tomatoes at the other side. But when the cameras are off and you go behind the scenes, are you friends with Republicans? Are Democrats and Republicans, are they cordial? Are they friendly? Are they even, heaven forbid, nice to each other?
I would say that they're less cordial and less friendly than they used to be, although there are still across the board good relations that are there. But we have a much more system of what I call partisan gridlock, where the Republican rarely votes for a Democrat or Democrat bill, and the Democrats rarely vote for a Republican bill. So there's not the collaboration for the most part in terms of legislating. And the other thing is that I watch a lot of TV. There's just all the time. You watch MSNBC, Fox, CNN, and others as well, and you see dozens and dozens of members of Congress on TV. And that's where they actually many of them do their work, Republicans and Democrats. And it doesn't foster a very good relationship, because most of the time when they're on, they're not talking sweet talk.
Yeah. How do you fix it?
Leadership, good leadership has a lot to do with it, and effective leadership, both from the presidential level and the congressional level. That's certainly part of it. Putting some restraints on money in politics, trying to get some limits on the amount that you can spend is certainly another way. I mean, the public, although, has to demand it. When these members of Congress go home, the public has to demand that they work together to get things done. I mean, ultimately, I'm not saying that the public's at fault with all of this stuff, but the general public, the people, have to demand that their elected officials do what they're supposed to do.
What I see is a corrosive nature is no one believes in the institutions anymore, right? No one believes the experts. No one believes the doctor. No one believes the teacher. No one believes the head of the FDA. No one believes the experts. The institutions seem to have lost their stature, and I don't know how that happened.
Well, and you can see it now with vaccines. I mean, the science that's been pretty much proven is now being challenged at the highest levels. So people don't know what to do. It's just one example of it. If I may throw back a little bit to my book is based upon my theory that self-deprecating humor is necessary for a free society to function well. That is, people have to be able to laugh at themselves. And if you look back at largely the very popular and great leaders in the past, from Abe Lincoln to FDR to Ronald Reagan, and others, these were people who knew how to use humor to kind of, do a jab to themselves and make themselves look like a human being. We now have a government that's filled with humorless people, and I'm not saying they should be comedians. That's not what I'm talking about. But it's like President Eisenhower once said that a sense of humor was absolutely critical to influencing people in Congress and in the public to do the right thing. And we've lost that as well.
Yeah, I think self-deprecating humor could be the greatest invention man's ever created, right? I mean, it puts everybody at ease. You can laugh at yourself no matter how angry you are at the other person. When the other person makes fun of themselves or gets you to laugh at them, it's the greatest icebreaker the world's ever seen.
Yeah, and it's not just politics. I mean, that's true in the business world or the nonprofit world or the charitable world, whatever you're talking about. But it's particularly true in politics, where you have to make decisions to impact people's lives, especially in the short term. And we have a dearth of that right now. And so I wrote this book about it. And it's not the question of telling jokes. It's the question of making fun of yourself appropriately. Now, we've had some presidents that have been better than that than not. And I think, for example, this is not a partisan attack on President Trump, but he never makes fun of himself. And if other people make fun of him, he lashes out at them like they're the enemy. He's very intolerant of the use of self-deprecating humor. And so, there's kind of a mean-spiritedness there that I wish we could find an alternative to it.
Dan Glickman is our guest. The book he's referring to is called Laughing at Myself, My Education in Congress, on the Farm, and at the Movies. Today, we're seeing a lot of congressmen and women who are saying, this is a waste, this is worthless, we don't want to be here. And we see them giving up some pretty good roles, some pretty good power to just not even deal with it. Is that the way you're seeing many of these resignations?
Yeah, a little bit, but I have more faith in the resilience of America. And yeah, some of them are giving up and don't think it's worth it. And, if that's the way they feel, they ought to get out of there and make room for better people. But the job is, listen, there's a lot of now personal security issues in the job that I never faced. I never worried about being attacked or assaulted. Now I think there's a lot of legitimacy in that worry in the Congress. And the other thing is that what we're finding, especially on the Republican side, but again, I'm not all that partisan, but if you don't go along with the crowd, you're ostracized. So the other point I would make is that there's very little room for independent thinking right now. That is, if you feel different from the president and you're a Republican, it's very difficult to vote differently or to talk differently.
That's former Secretary of Agriculture Dan Glickman. The book is called Laughing at Myself. More to get to. We got to talk about beef prices, and he once ran the Major Motion Picture Association of America. They were in charge of ratings. We'll talk a little movies with our guest, Secretary of Agriculture, former Secretary of Agriculture Dan Glickman. I'm McGraw Milhaven, America at Night. Back in a moment.
Coming to you from the heart of the nation, this is America at Night with McGraw Milhaven. Join the nightly conversation, America at Night, with McGraw Milhaven.
Hey, we'll talk open phones next hour. This hour, we have the great pleasure of talking to former Secretary of Agriculture Dan Glickman during the Clinton years from 1995 to 2001. His book is called Laughing at Myself. And, of course, he was president of the Motion Picture Association. We'll get to some of that. What's going on with beef prices? How much of that do you blame on tariffs, and how much of that do you just blame on the actual market?
I think most of the beef price issue has to do with the marketplace. So you have the cycles. You have low herd count and you have high herd count. And high prices beget low prices, as the old saying goes. So if you have very high prices, the herds will be culled. There'll be a lot of product out in the marketplace. Prices go down, and then that causes the reverse to happen. I mean, there are probably a lot of other causes, but I really can't blame right now the change in beef prices on tariffs.
So a cattle rancher told me that when beef prices are this high, you want to sell your beef and your
That's
cows.
Correct.
And so that reduces the opportunity to regrow the herd because you sold off all your cows.
That's right. It takes a few years to do that. And so, and during that time period, prices are extremely volatile. But, and then the beef prices are being hit right now by a disease that's largely coming from south of our border, Mexico, called the Mexican screwworm, which is devastating. It could destroy the American beef industry. And that's another issue so we've stopped importing Mexican cattle for a while. And that has also something to do with this.
How worried should we be about the Mexican screwworm? Talk about that for a second.
Well, we should be worried about it, but we have scientists and down there, and the Department of Agriculture has this as a very high priority. So I wouldn't worry about human beings getting sick from this, but it could affect the economics of growing cattle.
Then also, you've got corn prices up. We mentioned soybeans. Egg prices have been all over the place because of the bird flu. I know they tried to hang that on Biden. Now they're trying to hang it on Trump. How much of that is a presidential fault, and how much of that is just the natural nature of this bird flu outbreak?
Yeah, I mean, most of these animal diseases and health issues affecting agriculture are really not the part of a president, unless he or she decided to stop research or to do some foolish action affecting not, let's say, observing the crop and taking action early on. I haven't seen that really happen. I mean, unfortunately, Biden, who I don't think was the greatest president in the history of the country, but be that as it may, he gets blamed for everything by Trump. Even the amount of snow that falls, the amount of precipitation that's out there, the nature of a drought. So I wish for some reason he finds great glee and glory in just demeaning Biden every chance he gets. I think we ought to start looking forward and not backward.
Dan Glickman, how did a young man from Kansas, from Wichita, grow up to become the head of the Major Motion Picture Association of America?
Well, carefully, thoughtfully, and probably the fortune of luck. So I was in Congress for many years, and I served on the Judiciary Committee, which had jurisdiction over piracy, film piracy, intellectual property issues, which is a big, enormous issue for people in not only movies, but television and music as well. So when the then head of the association, his name was Jack Valenti, decided to retire, he liked me and he recommended me to his bosses who ran the major motion picture studios. And I guess I was there through the luck of whatever, and Valenti's pushing with the industry. I really got it because Valenti wanted me in there.
Yeah, so it kills me today. The Major Motion Picture Association, PG-13. You guys were responsible for putting the ratings, R-rated, G-rated, right. PG-13, so on and so forth. It kills me today that when I was 13 or 12, I couldn't go see a PG-13 movie. But my 5-year-old daughter, someone's 10-year-old daughter, can go on TikTok and see the most vile, disgusting, pornographic, inappropriate things, and there's no filter, and there's no guardrails whatsoever.
Well, the internet's a tough place, and I think there are more and more people who realize that the internet is the Wild West, and we have to do responsible regulation of the internet, particularly the use of cell phones and schools and other kinds of things. But going back to your particular question, I mean, today you can see more than you could have 30 or 40 years ago, but our culture's changed, our standards have changed. And so that's okay. That's happened a lot of different places in our society. But those ratings are still very important to parents, whether a movie gets a G, a PG, a PG-13, an R, or an NC-17, which is rare. There are very few movies that come out with an NC-17, which is like the old X, because the movie theaters won't show up.
I get that they're important, but it's almost comical, right? If there's a parent checking the ratings of a movie while they're allowing them to watch TikTok and vile, disgusting pornography on TikTok that sort of is sent to them. They don't even go looking for it. It's sent to them, and they're worried about a PG-13 movie.
Well, apparently the movie industry and the television industry has passed that test, but the internet has not passed the test. So there is a lot of junk and terrible things that are just shown on a variety of different channels. You mentioned one, but there are a multiplicity of others, and it's easy for a kid to access about anything. So, our schools need to do a better job of educating people. We need to, I think, restrict the use of handheld devices and other kinds of devices, and at least in schools, so kids can't bring their phone to school and be texting and all this other stuff with each other. There's no real way to put the genie back in the bag, but we can do a much better job as society at trying to minimize the risk here. And the risk is great. A lot of kids' lives are ruined because of this stuff.
You mentioned piracy. China comes up with piracy. There's a lot of talk about China. It doesn't seem like we seem to be doing anything when it comes to piracy in China.
Well, that's been just a continuing problem. I went to China several times. My son's in the movie business, and I went over there and I went to a video store. This is many years ago when DVDs and videos were much more prolific than they are now. And I saw a DVD of one of my son's movies that hadn't even come out yet, and they were selling it there. So when I raised hell about it, they did pull the movie from that video store, but that was kind of a rarity. But the Chinese now have one thing that's worked in our favor a little bit. The Chinese now have a much more developed indigenous movie industry themselves, and they're fighting their own film piracy over there too, which has helped us.
Oh, interesting. Do you watching this Netflix Paramount fight for Warner Brothers? What do you think of this, and how do you think this thing should shape out?
Yeah, I'm glad I'm no longer in that job, because I'd be paralyzed, because these were all the member companies that I had to work for, and they're fighting each other like crazy. And so I don't know. No, Netflix is a great innovator, and they provided method of distributing content which we'd never seen before. That is the online, the streaming method. And now everybody else has kind of followed their model in some way, but they're the real king of streaming. And a lot of people are worried that if Netflix takes over Warner Brothers, then it'll be the end of the theatrical experience in motion pictures. I'm not quite as worried about that, but I'm watching it carefully because it has to do with how we're enforcing our antitrust laws and how big we want these individual companies to get. So you got Netflix on one side, Paramount on the other side. They're both going after each other. And right now we'll see who wins and if the government gets involved or not.
You really think there's still a place for a movie theater 5-10 years from now?
I hope so. I don't know. Maybe I'm being Pollyanna about it. The movie theater is one of the few places where everybody can go, rich, poor, or in between, get into communal experience and watch something enjoyable, and the world is outside, and they can do it without all the problems that they have to face when they go outside of the movie. Right now, it's tough to monetize movies. The only movies that are really making any money are the big giant blockbusters. I mean, Tom Cruise and Mission Impossible make a lot of money, and there are others of the big blockbuster type that are doing money, but the smaller and more independent type movies are really having trouble getting folks and getting eyeballs into the theaters.
Yeah. What about cable? Do you think cable will survive this, or will it all be streaming?
Well, no, I think cable will survive because there's a market for news and there's a market for other forms of entertainment. I don't know whether we're going to end up with all streaming or not. I just, I remember that when we first had the Betamax and then the DVDs, my predecessor, Jack Bellini, called that the Jack the Ripper effect on the movie industry. And he said it would destroy the movie industry, and it actually didn't. It brought a lot of people to watch content that weren't otherwise, didn't go to the movies. But also the movies are very expensive. If you have a family of 4, while I still do it, a lot of people can't afford it. And It's in many cases, it's cheaper to watch it in a streaming mode. But I hope we still have the theatrical experience. I think it's very important.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I love going to the movie theater. By the time you get ready to go to the movie, it's out of the movie, and there's 4 more cycles of movies that go by. Plus, the $12 popcorn isn't a whole lot of fun.
Well, I've tried. One of the things I tried to do when I was there is to get a greater variety of food served in movies and healthier food. So it wasn't just candy and popcorn, but I got a lot of the public wrote me and they said, when we go to the movies, we don't want to be told what to eat. We don't want to be told how healthy something is. Leave me alone. I'm going there because I want to enjoy myself. So I kind of backed away from that.
Dan Glickman is our guest, former Secretary of the Agriculture under the Clinton administration. He was a congressman for years. He was head of the Motion Picture Association. His book is called Laughing at Myself. Secretary, I'll give you the last word. If somebody came to you and said, I'm thinking about running for Congress, what advice would you give a young man or a young woman today who wants to run for Congress?
Well, I first ask them, do they really want to win? And if they do, that's one thing. If they're running to make a point or push some ideological agenda, that's another issue. I would not encourage them to run for that reason, unless they had some sort of way that they can win. I ran for Congress when I was 31 years old in 1976, and back then a congressional race cost me $100,000 total for a primary and a general. If I did that race today, it would cost me $10 million, maybe $15 million. I wish there were another way to run for Congress other than spending these vast amounts of money. And so, but you have to ask people, can they raise, can they raise the money? And are they willing to go through all the aggravation? It's still a great job. It's still a job that you can do great things for the public on. But it's no longer really quite as fun as it used to be.
Yeah, Dan Glickman. The book is called Laughing at Myself, My Education in Congress, on the Farm, and at the Movies. Thank you very much for your time, sir. Good luck down the road. Good luck with the book, and thanks for checking in.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Former Secretary of the Agriculture, Dan Glickman, under the Clinton administration, written the book called Laughing at Myself, and talked about all sorts of things. Beef prices, farm subsidies, the movie industry, and man led an interesting life. It is America at Night with McGraw Milhaven. Back in a moment.
America at Night with McGraw Milhaven, where the nation comes to talk. Relax. You're listening to America at Night with McGraw Milhaven.
Hey, we are just about done for hour number 2. Next hour, we will throw open the phones and off and running. We're still being promised that we will be getting a text line here very shortly. So as we're starting to stretch our legs a little bit, that text line is right around the corner. You know, with all this talk about streaming and Netflix and Paramount buying Warner Brothers and how TV is changing dramatically as we speak, I happened to come across on HBO this week or over the weekend, HBO started airing Mad Men, which was an AMC show back, I don't know, time sort of gets away from you. When was this? This was in the, early 2000s maybe? 2010s, I guess. And it's a show set in the 60s about an advertising firm in New York City. And one of the characters in this show is the 1960s. The way they dress, the way they light their cigarettes, the way the offices look, the cars they drive, the way they drink. It's sort of like an ode to the 60s, and it's sort of like a time machine into the 60s. And there's an episode in the first season where John Hamm, who plays Don Draper, is this creative type. And John Slattery is his boss. And they're hard drinking. I mean, a world we can't even fathom today, right? The 3-martini lunch crowd. I don't know how these people operated or survived after noon on a Tuesday when they went out for a 3-martini lunch. But somehow the world was a better place when half the world went out for lunch and got plowed at lunch. But this scene where they're going to meet with Nixon's campaign because Nixon needs some help because he's going against this young Navy hero named John Kennedy. And so they're talking to this ad agency in New York. And so they go out to lunch and they have a few too many. The elevator breaks. They got to walk up the steps. And when they get to the office, they meet the people from the Nixon campaign. And John Slattery perceives to lose his martinis and his oysters. And I saw this, and then I saw a couple of articles on it. In the filming, you see John Slattery, the actor, just projectile vomit all this. Well, you see off in the corner that, and I read this, I didn't know this after I saw it. I looked it up. When they digitally remastered it for HBO, apparently one of the scenes got crossed with one of the other scenes, and you can see the prop guy holding the hose as John Slattery's throwing up. It's really pretty. You're like, oh, wait, there's the guy holding the hose. So it sort of breaks that sort of fourth wall. Anyway, Mad Men, so now I can't stop watching it. I watched it when it originally came out. I haven't seen it in a couple years. If you're looking for a good series to stream, what's great about this is that it's an actual TV show where they have episodes. And an episode tells a story in the larger sense of a story, unlike streaming today where, I don't know, these series that are, not that they're bad, it's just different. And watching a TV show on streaming is different than watching a TV show that was made for streaming. It's different. It's a different movie. It's a different experience. And maybe I've watched so many streaming shows now that I forgot. But Mad Men is a TV show that you can watch and you can binge. But it's different because it's a TV show. But it's also one of the best ever created. And it is an ode to the 1960s. And it is, there's a scene where they're having drinks at the house and the girlfriend's pregnant. And the wife says, "One more for the road?" "Sure, absolutely." They're all smoking. I mean, they're smoking all over the place. Mad Men on HBO. Check it out. All right, stay right there. We got an hour to go. It's open phones. Our executive director this hour and every hour is Alex Hinton. Our engineer tonight is Richard Good. I'm McGraw Milhaven, and this is America at Night on Westwood One.
Westwood One presents America at Night. Here's your host, McGraw Milhaven.
Hey, Tuesday night, open phones. It's you and me. Last couple of nights, we've had some great phone calls, and then every once in a while, somebody calls up and just starts yelling at me. Last night, some guy called up and started yelling at me about something. Got off the air. I was like, what was he yelling at me about? I really don't have any control over anything. He was yelling at me about something to do with, I don't know. And then the other guy was yelling at me about affordability and something. And I was like, what? I don't really have any control over any of this. What are you yelling at me for? I'll also say this. Earlier tonight, I was with the family, and we were at dinner, and we were putting up the Christmas tree, and we were taking out Christmas ornaments, right? First Christmas, the second Christmas, the hand printent on the plaster of Paris, right? Oh, my sister gave me this one. Oh, I got this one when we were on that trip to Europe, and we got this, right? And you're sitting there, and I know it's a ritual that has been done for hundreds of years here in this country, and every year, every family does it. Who put this away last year? Where's that box? I had this. Well, this used to go with this. The batteries are dead. We have, right? The whole thing. The dog's eating the furniture. Why is the dog eating the ornament she made last year at school, right? And I was watching this unfold, and I knew I had to get ready for the show tonight. And I just sort of sat back in the chair, and I thought, I'm pretty lucky in this country. And I know you get down on your knees and thank God, right, for whatever problem you have, whatever issue you're dealing with, whatever. I know if it's money woes, if it's health issues, I get it, right? We all have them. But you just got to take a step back and be thankful for the things you have. And, watching the family put the tree up and watching the chaos, I said a little prayer. It was really very sweet. And so I'm in a good mood. So don't yell at me tonight, okay? That's all I'm saying. Don't yell at me. Excuse me. You can disagree. We can agree. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about, the politics of the day, the news of the day. You can have strong feelings. Just don't yell at me. We're just talking. That's America at Night. And the idea of this new show is that this last hour will be reserved for callers. And we'll take callers, and we'll take them in the order they come. And first come, first serve. We don't really screen. We make sure that you're somewhat coherent. If you've had one too many, we'll probably ask you to call back tomorrow night. But the whole idea is to see who's out there, whatever's on your mind. If it's something from an earlier show, something that happened today, you have a question that you need some expert advice. I happen to be an expert at giving advice to other people. I have a terrible time of taking my own advice, but I am very good at solving your problems. My problems, I'm not so good at solving, but your problems, I'm actually really good at. So the phone numbers are 1-844-2-McGraw, 1-844-2-McGraw, or 1-844-262-4729. So we'll take some phone calls, and we'll sort of go from there. Outside of college football being utterly and completely broken, the winter meetings continue, and it looks like Kyle Schwarber is staying with the Phillies for 5 years and $150 million. Holy mackerel. And then you got Edwin Diaz leaving the Mets and going to the Dodgers, 3 years for $69 million. I will say this about a closer. And I think this is an international truth no matter where you are in the world, if you are a baseball fan. And that is, I don't think there is any fan in America who truly likes their closer. I knew Yankee fans who had a problem with Mariano Rivera. If you're a Yankee fan and you have a problem with Mariano Rivera, what hope does anybody else have liking their closer? So you got that going on. They still haven't released the boat video. I don't know why they won't release the boat video. What's the hang up? What's the controversy? The White House has played this all wrong, in my humble opinion. They're acting like they're guilty. They're acting like they're scared. Why not just release it? It doesn't matter what it shows, but show it anyway. They keep giving the Democrats, this story is a 2-week-old story because the Republicans in the White House won't get out of their own way. Release the video and be done with it. Move on. I don't get it. 1-844-2-McGraw, 1-844-2-McGraw, or 1-844-262-4729. Before we go to the phones, let me do this. Last night, we got a flood of phone calls at the end of the hour. Do not wait till the end of the hour. I can't get you all in. If you call in earlier, I have a chance to actually have a conversation with you. Let's go to the phones here. I got Alex. We're working on some new software here, so go easy on me. Let's see if we can figure this out here. All right, let me do this, and let me do this. And I believe we have got Max. Max, you're on America at Night. Good evening. Thanks for joining us.
McGraw, good evening. What a pleasure it is to talk to you. I love your new show. I'm a big fan of the radio you do in St. Louis. That's where I'm calling from tonight.
Well, thanks. Love to hear it. Max, what do you got?
So, McGraw, you talked about putting your tree up with your family and feeling blessed and getting in the Christmas spirit. Just wanted to talk Christmas movies with you and get your thoughts on what you think are the great Christmas movies out there. Obviously, It's a Wonderful Life, I think, tops the list. Then I would say, The Bells of St. Mary. And then I would say number 3 with a bullet. Oh, yeah. And then I would say number 3 with a bullet is Die Hard. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Boy, you're really bringing it tonight there, Max. The controversy of Die Hard is or is not a Christmas movie. To put Die Hard in the same category as Ingrid Bergman and Bing Crosby and The Bells of St. Mary's, I don't know. I don't know if you can do that. Die Hard, a great movie, no question about it. I guess it's a Christmas movie because it happens at Christmas. Is that the definition of a Christmas movie? I got to tell you, in terms of, we'll do this. We'll go old school, new school. All right, how about that? Old school, for me, Miracle on 34th Street.
Classic, no doubt.
Yeah, that one. And
what did you think about the colorization of that?
Wait, you mean the remake or the colorized version of the black and white?
When they colorized the black and white, it really kind of creeped me out, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It doesn't work. The colorization sort of ruins the whole thing.
Totally.
And the remake was terrible, but the original.
No, that's
that one's, for me, that is just great. And as for a new one, I got to tell you, Buddy the Elf is pretty good. What is that one?
Agreed. It's probably just on too much, but yeah, it's a classic.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah. All right.
All right,
Max.
McGraw, listen, I love your new show, man. I'll be tuning in every night. Best of luck.
Max, don't go changing. Thanks for the phone call.
All
right. We go from St. Louis and we go to San Francisco. David, you're on America at Night. Good evening. Thanks for checking in.
Oh, well, thanks, McGraw. Yeah, I'm originally from St. Louis County, so yeah, I knew I recognized your voice. Hey, well, what I was interested in was the economy. Christmas is coming up, and people got, let's say, shallow pockets right now. I mean, the economy is pretty crappy from the tariffs. What did I hear? Trump is going to give the farmers $12 billion after he cheated them out of $40 billion. So if you look at Trump's history, before he became president, he had, 3,500 lawsuits against him because he had cheated so many people, and he would typically pay off 30%. So is $12 billion part of, what's that, a part of $40 billion?
You know what's funny, David, is I think and I don't mean this as I'm not trying to be flippant here, but I truly believe that if you are a Trump supporter, you're convinced the economy is doing just fine. And if you're a never Trumper or an anti-Trumper, you're singing how terrible the economy is. And the truth is, for some people, the economy is really bad. But for other people, the economy is just fine. And I think truly, if you look at the numbers, we have a K-shaped economy. We have some people who are killing it, right? The market's going through the roof. They're invested. They got great jobs. Their 401ks are through the roof. Their portfolios are through the roof. And there are other ones who are struggling, who are having issues, who are having a hard time with the supply chain, who are having a hard time with the price of food. I mean, I went out the other night for dinner, and I looked at the bill, and I choked. So I was like, oh my God, dinner for 3 people is, $200. And I mean, it wasn't like we went to a fancy place. Luckily I was able to afford it. But I mean, there's a lot of people who are looking at this economy we're living in 2 different worlds. And a lot of it is based on your perception, and some of it's reality, though. But I mean, there are people who are loving it, and there are people who are struggling.
Right,
I'll give you the last
and that's
word,
what's
David.
the big deal. Had you ever heard of hyperinflation?
I've heard of it. Yes.
It's famous. Between World War I and World War II, the Germans kicked out the king. World War I is over, and the king lost the war, so the people kicked him out and became brand new republic. And so the king was furious, and so he did whatever he could do to ruin the economy of the brand new republic. And so they created hyperinflation, where you had to have wheelbarrows full of money to buy a loaf of bread. And there's photographs of that. And so Trump's on his way. I saw India, 100? They used to have 90 to the dollar, and now it's 116,000. So, it's getting, this hyperinflation is what Trump and his buddies are all about. They're ruining the American dollar and dragging down the world.
David in San Francisco, thanks for the phone call. Have a good night. Stay safe. Merry Christmas. America at Night, McGraw Milhaven. It's open phones, 1-844-2-McGraw, 1-844-262-4729. Tony in Montreal, you'll be first up on the other side of the break. America at Night with McGraw Milhaven.
Live from coast to coast, this is America at Night with McGraw Milhaven. Join the conversation. Call 844-2-McGraw. America at Night with McGraw Milhaven.
All right, 1-844-2-McGraw, 1-844-2-McGraw. A guy in St. Louis named Max called up and said, favorite Christmas movies. I threw out there Miracle on 34th Street and what's the one, Buddy the Elf? What's that one? That's Elf, right? Yeah, Elf with Will Ferrell. That one's pretty good. We got Tony in Montreal. Tony, good evening. Thanks for calling America at Night.
Yes, good evening, McGraw. Just you were doing the winter movies. Well, we've got a full-blown storm up here, and it's quite cold up here, and we're enjoying our winter season. And I agree with you.
How many inches? How many inches are you getting, Tony?
Just 3 tonight, but they're calling for a big storm tomorrow, so that's manageable for us.
All right,
quite manageable. I just wanted to mention the gentleman caller from San Francisco. He was talking about the Weimar Republic, and he's got to do a little bit more research on his hyperinflation. I don't think he was really spot on there, but I won't argue with him. Just maybe he should do a little bit more research before he starts convincing McGraw and your audience that the Trump organization are going to create hyperinflation. I think that's a far-fetched idea. Anyway, I just want to talk about one thing. I'm not far from Vermont. As you know, Montreal is not that far from Vermont. It's an hour and a half if you go to Burlington. But in Winooski, they raised the Somalian flag today. And I'm a Canadian guy. And I remember Black Hawk Down, and I remember the Somali, I don't know what you want to call them, people were dragging bodies, U.S. bodies, through the streets of Mogadishu. And I think that's a lasting impression for me. And I think that the government of the United States was super kind to bring many, many Somalians to the United States to give them a different and better life. And a lot of people today are wondering, American people, and even some Canadian people are saying, well, there's a lot of issues coming out of Minnesota and maybe even Maine, Portland, Maine, with Somalis and the issue of corruption, cash criminality. And it seems like, nobody's willing to call it out. And you just said in your monologue that the earlier hour, I guess, they're talking about the dichotomy between the Democrats and the Republicans. They're at each other's throat. But isn't the benefit the ship that you're in? Like, if the ship goes down, then everybody on the ship is not going to survive. And that's the United States is the ship. So why aren't all of the people on both parties thinking, like, if we're going to have a certain area of the United States ripping off the government for billions of dollars, aren't we interested in protecting all American taxpayers? That doesn't seem to be partisan to me.
Yeah,
and,
I know. Hold on. What do you're all over the place, Tony. Are you talking about the Somalis? Which story you're talking about is ripping off America?
Well, when I was did some research on the issue that was raised, especially with the Trump government saying that there was issues of abuse in Minnesota and Minneapolis regarding the Somali community regarding certain types of benefits.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I know that story up in Minnesota has got Tim Walz up in knots, and he's under the gun because they were stealing the COVID money and the benefit money and whatever else, and whoever stole it, they should throw him to the wall and do whatever they got to do to him. I don't know though if every single Somali should be guilty by association, right? I mean, 14 of the 19 Tony, I got to go. I'll let that be the last word. I'll talk more about it on the other side. I got a break, bottom of the hour break.
No problem.
These network breaks, these hard breaks are killing me. I like to talk until I run out of time. McGraw Milhaven, America at Night. Back in a moment.
You're listening to America at Night with McGraw Milhaven. What's on your mind? Call 844-2-McGraw and be a part of America at Night with McGraw Milhaven.
All right, we got open phones. 1-844-2-McGraw, 1-844-262-4729. America at Night, McGraw Milhaven. I'm your host, and we've got open phones, and I believe we've got Jim in Rotterdam, New York. Jim, hello.
Yes, sir. All the luck to you on your new show, pal.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
That David from San Francisco, I couldn't help myself. I had to call in. He doesn't have a clue. The inflation was caused by Joe Biden and Barack Obama behind the scenes. Joe Biden wasn't in office 4 hours. He signed 5 executive orders sticking it to the petroleum companies. No more XL pipeline. No more renewing of drilling leases. No more drilling on federal land. No more offshore drilling. If he cut his ponytail off and took his tie-dyed shirt off and drove across the Midwest, in South Dakota and Kansas, you see 12 John Deere combines as big as a 2-story house and a diagonal reaping in wheat, 11 o'clock at night with spotlights. They run on diesel fuel. They put their stores into tractor trailers, run on diesel. They bring it to the rail yards and run on diesel. Bring it to the supermarkets, run on diesel. He caused the inflation, and he topped it off by printing loads and loads and loads of monopoly, worthless money backed by nothing. And stop blaming COVID, inflation on COVID. It was Joe Biden and his entourage.
Do you think Donald Trump has any criticism his way for the tariffs and the tariffs causing some inflation or keeping it higher than it should be?
No, I don't, because Canada has been sticking it to our farmers for the last 30 years, and about time some president had the backbone to do something about it.
What has he done? So you think raising tariffs on Canadian goods somehow helps the American farmer?
In the short run, no. In the long run, yes.
What about China? I mean, China's not buying any of their soybeans. Now we got to bail them out.
Hey, look, man, I'm not a analyst on all this. I gotta cut you short. That's about as good as I can do on my phone call.
Jim in Rotterdam, New York. Thank you, sir. Call back anytime. Appreciate the insight. There you go. That's how it works. It is open phones here on America at Night with McGraw Milhaven. Jim in Rotterdam. Tony in Montreal. I want to get back to something Tony said. It was kind of interesting, and it's sort of he was going in a couple different directions, but I ran out of time with that bottom of the hour break. I'm still trying to deal with that bottom of the hour break. It's a hard break, so I got to break. The time waits for no affiliate, so you got to break at the bottom of the hour. But what's interesting about he mentioned Somalis, and I know Somalis have. Some people have a negative connotation on Somalis. Some people have negative connotations about some immigrants who come from Venezuela, right? Immigrants who come from some of these, quote unquote, lesser countries, as President Trump likes to refer to them. We have to be very careful about lumping good Somalis with bad Somalis, right? Yeah, there are some Somalis who, right? He mentioned Black Hawk Down. Right, just because there are a few in the country that have done terrible things, should we impugn everybody in that country? You go back to 9/11. 15 of the 19 hijackers were from Saudi Arabia, and now Saudi Arabia is about to fund Paramount buying Warner Brothers. So. We need to be careful, right? These immigrants come into this country and they do all this damage. Well, 15 of the 19 hijackers came into this country illegally through Canada, mind you. Let's wall off the border in Mexico because we don't want any of these 9/11 hijackers coming in from Canada into this country and doing terrible things. Well, okay. Now, one more thing about Saudi Arabia. This is interesting, right? So Paramount wants to buy Warner Brothers, and they're using Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth funds and a lot of money from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is going to spend billions of dollars to buy Paramount, and apparently the story, or to buy Warner Brothers, and apparently the story goes that they have to get regulatory approval to make it happen. I touched on this last night, right? Do we really want Saudi Arabia and controlling or having some financial interest or some say in the movies we watch, the TVs we watch? That's an interesting conversation to have. Well, apparently the Saudi Arabia Sovereign Wealth Fund has said, we're going to give you the billions of dollars, but we don't want any controlling interest in Paramount or Warner Brothers. Now, if I give somebody $10 and I say, buy me lunch, I'm going to tell them what I want for lunch. Don't get me the ham, I want the turkey. If you're giving somebody billions of dollars, why are you doing it if you're not getting any ownership or any say in the money you're lending? That's interesting because they don't have any controlling interest. It's easier to get regulatory approval. And if they ever do apparently get some type of controlling interest or some type of ownership, then it has to go back through the regulatory approval. That's the way it was explained to me today. But it is awful interesting that Saudi Arabia, home of 15 of the 19 hijackers, who came into this country illegally from Canada, the country is now going to turn around and buy Warner Brothers. But they're just going to give Paramount the money to buy it. They don't want anything for it. Let me just give you $40 billion and buy the company. Don't worry about it. I'm good. I don't want any say in it. That's a tad odd. But I need, anyway, as Tony brought it up, it was on my mind. I thought I'd just sort of throw it out there. 1-844-2-McGraw, 1-844-2-McGraw, 1-844-262-4729. Give us a call. Phones usually come in towards the back half of the show. I know it's new. I know I'm a new voice. I know it's a new show. You're just sort of getting to know me, and I'm just getting to know you. But I want to keep this hour open so we can take all sorts of comers. And Max earlier, right, he wanted to know what the best Hollywood movie was. I said Elf was good. Elf was solid. Miracle on 34th Street, my all-time favorite. Bad Santa. Bad Santa. That's the one with Billy Bob Thornton. So I have a minute here before we go to the break. Let me talk about Billy Bob Thornton for a second. Billy Bob Thornton's in that movie Landman. Now, I've had a chance to interview Billy Bob Thornton. And I've had a chance to interview lots of people in this job. You get to meet him, you get to see him, you get to hang out with him, you get to see him in social settings. Can I just tell you that Billy Bob Thornton isn't just nice. Billy Bob Thornton is like insanely nice. Like almost to the point where you're like, is this an act? But it's all real. I mean, if you meet Billy Bob Thornton out at a restaurant and you go up to Billy Bob Thornton and you ask Billy Bob Thornton directions, hey, how do I get to the men's room, or do you know where First Street is? He won't tell you where it is. He'll like pick you up and carry you there. That's how nice Billy Bob Thornton is. So the fact that he plays these sort of bad guy characters, I love Billy Bob Thornton. I think he is a fantastic actor before I ever met him. And then when I met him, I was like, you are the nicest man in the world. Just a genuinely nice man. And it was really nice to see that a good actor can be a nice guy as well. So if you know Billy Bob Thornton, you know what I'm talking about. All right, we got a break. 1-844-2-McGraw, 1-844-262-4729. It's America at Night. Give us a call. Late night conversation, coast to coast. America at Night, Westwood 1, McGraw Milhaven. Back in a moment.
Join the conversation. Call 844-2-McGraw. America at Night with McGraw Milhaven. What's happening in your world? Call 844-2-McGraw and be a part of America at Night with McGraw Milhaven.
1-844-2-McGraw, 1-844-262-4729. We have a couple of lines open for you right now. If you're listening to us and you want to pass the night away and have a little conversation, 1-844-2-McGraw, M-C-G-R-A-W, or 1-844-262-4729. If you don't want to call tonight, put it in your phone and save it. And when you do want to call up, when you do hear something, there's something from an earlier in the evening, something from a different show, something that spurred your interest or piqued your interest in something, please, I was you at one point, would listen to a radio show and wanted to call but was too nervous to call. So please don't be nervous. If I can do this, anybody can do this. Hey, we got some news here. Miami's mayor's race is getting some attention this morning, or this evening, I should say. The Democrats win the mayor's race in Miami. Technically, it's a nonpartisan race. And prominent Democrats were backing a woman named Higgins, who ends up winning. As of Tuesday evening, Elaine Higgins is projected to win. She's a county commissioner. She's won 59% of the vote. She is getting ready to beat Republican-backed Emilio Gonzalez, a former city manager. This is by the way, we should say that last year Trump won the county votes, Miami-Dade County, 55% of the county votes. President Trump won in 2020, what would that have been? 2020, right? 2024, I guess. She'll be the first Democrat and the first non-Hispanic person to be Miami's mayor in 30 years. Wow. That's some interesting news. I didn't know that. And then there was another story that's getting ready to be a big story of all the big stories. Two of them. One is Donald Trump has now greenlit NVIDIA chip sales to China. And there are a number of people in conservative circles and in security circles who are scratching their heads at this one. Is China a friend or is China a foe? I don't know. But it seems like, depending on what day of the week it is, they are a friend or a foe. But apparently they're a friend today, and NVIDIA is going to be allowed to sell chips, right? Artificial intelligence runs on chips, these super high AI advanced chips. They're going to be allowed to be sold to China. The United States is going to collect 25% on the sales, which sounds like Trump just nationalized NVIDIA, right? If you're taking an economic stake in NVIDIA, you would collect the money they're making on these sales. So I don't know about that, but there are a number of people who are wondering if China takes our chips and creates an artificial intelligence supercharged army using our technology. Is that going to be a good thing? I don't know. We'll see if we can get some experts on that over the next couple of days to talk about it. And then there's something else going on that I think is really kind of interesting. And I think if Donald Trump does have a Achilles heel, I really honestly truly believe this. And that is, over the last couple of weeks, you have noticed quite a bit of pushback on data centers. And if you notice and pay attention to, there's a whole lot of conservatives and conservative towns, conservative counties, conservative areas in America that are pushing back on data centers. And what's a data center other than a huge building that houses computers? That runs computers, that runs artificial intelligence, because you need massive amounts of computing energy and computing power to run these artificial intelligence world. Big buildings, gigantic, enormous buildings, billions of dollars. These are like cities under a roof. And they take massive energy from the grid to run. And they use massive amounts of water to cool the systems. And you're starting to see a lot of pushback on this from rural communities, from red states, from red counties. And it's a real deal. And yet Donald Trump continues to push ahead with artificial intelligence to the point where he's getting ready this week to sign an executive order that would block any state from having any type of regulation on artificial intelligence, because he wants it to be unfettered access for all of this artificial intelligence. That could be a problem for Trump going forward with his base. David in California, welcome to America at Night. Hello.
Hey, how you doing? Great show.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate the phone call.
So I understand that, our government our leaders impact the economy, but I learned from my single mother who raised 7 of us by herself that the most important economy is my economy.
Right.
And she came here as an immigrant with no education and eventually earned 2 bachelors. She lives in a $750,000 home. She's retired. She's 88. All of her children work hard. We make a good living. We provide for our children and our grandchildren. And I'm wondering when someone is going to really address that the economy, the most important economy is your own economy. And we would stop wasting our money on stuff that isn't important. If we would manage our money wisely, yeah, the government can impact us, but ultimately we need to be responsible for the day-to-day economy that we manage ourselves.
You mean like personal responsibility?
Yes, sir. And neither party talks about that. Neither party says, look, the bottom line is, no pun intended, take care of your own house. And then it doesn't matter what the government does.
You mean like ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country?
There you go, my brother. See, this is what's interesting. I listened to talk radio for 30 years. It's rare that I find even a conservative talk show that tells people this is the real economy. It's yours.
David, it's so much easier. It's so much easier to blame somebody else for your plight in life. Come on, man.
And to scare everybody, like I've been, like I said, for years, all the economy, we're gonna.
They make people afraid to leave their house, to do anything because I agree with you. Hey, David,
you have
congratulations.
A great show, by the way.
Thank you, David. Congratulations to your mother. It's an American dream, what she did.
Absolutely.
So call back anytime, David. I got to go. Our executive director tonight is Alex Hinton. Our engineer tonight is Richard Good. I'm McGraw Milhaven. That was a great way to end the show. I'm McGraw Milhaven, and this is America at Night on Westwood One. Good night, everybody.